Hare Krishna. Namo Om Shivadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bole Srimade Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prajarine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Vasyat Deshadharini. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gauravakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So today we are celebrating the 125th birth anniversary of SRILA A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The service that A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada has done to the human race, to humanity, is immeasurable. You know, his life is an example of how a devotee, how a bhakta should listen to the advice of his spiritual master and then devote himself to the service of mankind, to uplift people spiritually and lead them back to Godhead. Prabhupada's spiritual master, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami, instructed him, asked him to go to the Western world and preach Krishna's message. Because Prabhupada knew English, he was educated and he was well versed in the Vedas, well versed in English, and therefore his spiritual master told him to go to the Western world and then spread the message of Krishna, the message of the Bhagavad Gita, and then spread this message all over the world. So, obeying his spiritual master's advice, spiritual master's instruction, Prabhupada decided to go to the Western world. And he did not have any support there. He decided to go, but he did not have the wherewithal. He did not have the money to travel to the Western world. And therefore, he had to beg for a complimentary ticket from a shipping company in Bombay. And then he went on a cargo ship to America. He did not know many people there in America. He had only one contact. One doctor was there. So he reaches there in America after a long journey of 30 days, which was very difficult. He had seasickness, plus he had 2 heart attacks on the way. But in spite of that, because he had submitted himself to the will of God, to the will of Krishna, and he had surrendered himself to the will of Krishna, and therefore, nothing happened, and he reached safely the shore of America. And that was in 1965, and he was already 69 years old. And what he had on the journey, his pocket money was just 40 rupees or $40. Now, the journey was very difficult. He said he went there, he did not have much contact, and then he lived in a storefront, and then preaching was difficult. He did not know how to begin. He did not know what to do, whom to meet. So what he did, he just went to a park and sat under a tree and then started chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Naturally, this was in the 60s. And that was the time when America was plagued by the problem of the hippies. And there were a lot of hippies in the garden, in the park. And these hippies came and listened to Prabhupada because they were amazed at the sight of an Indian yogi, an Indian sannyasi in saffron clothes, sitting alone and singing the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to the tune of the Kartala. So they were rather attracted, fascinated by this sight of this sannyasi. So they came and sat around him and listened to him. And though they did not understand any syllable that Prabhupada uttered, they did not understand the meaning of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. They were simply fascinated by the sound of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. and gradually they started swaying their heads to the tune of the mantra that Prabhupada was chanting. They were the first disciples of Srila Prabhupada. And then, gradually the number increased. The hippies who were leading a very degraded style of living, they changed their habits. They started taking bath. They cut their hair. They shaved their hair. They shaved the beards, and they followed whatever Prabhupada asked them to do. And thus, Prabhupada had a few disciples in the Western world. And the next year, in 1966, Prabhupada succeeded in registering ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And thus started this big movement which has spread now all over the world. Now, the service that he has done to America, not only to America, to the whole world, but especially to America, because this hippie problem was a big problem for American society. And it was Prabhupada's credit that he could solve this problem once and for all, because all these people changed their way of life, and they dedicated themselves to the service of God, service of Krishna. And that movement, which is started there in a very simple way, now it has spread all over the world. And within 12 years, he established more than hundreds of temples, Hare Krishna centers in American and different cities in America, then in Canada, then in England. Then he traveled all over the world several times and established centers, in fact, in all the continents of the world. And thus he could really help so many fallen souls, people who were leading a very decadent life, people who were leading a life of immorality and debauchery. He could help them to come out of this and then live a life which will lead them to Krishna, lead them to spirituality, and thus save themselves from the attractions of this material world and go back to Godhead. So that is the service that Prabhupada has done. It is no wonder that the Indian government has decided to bring out a coin, 125 rupees coin, in memory of the service that he has rendered to human society, rendered to the world. And on this occasion, it is heartening to note that the whole world has come to recognize the tremendous service that Prabhupada has given to the world. Hare Krishna.